Welcome to Flashpoints. I'm Jeff Pegues, along with CBS News senior national security analyst Juan Zarate. Let's talk about the death of Warren Weinstein, his wife releasing a statement saying, quote, "Unfortunately, the assistance we received from other elements of the U.S. government was inconsistent and disappointing over the course of 3.5 years. I hope that my husband's death and the others who have faced similar tragedies in recent months will finally prompt the U.S. government to take its responsibilities seriously and establish a coordinated and consistent approach to supporting hostages and their families." So she was critical of the U.S. hostage policy.
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, sympathies and condolences to the Weinstein family and the Italian family. You never want to have to go through this, and so sympathies to them, and clearly reflecting frustration, not just with the death of their loved one, but with how they were perhaps treated by the U.S. government. Jeff, I used to oversee U.S. government hostage policy for the White House as the Deputy National Security Advisor, and this is one of the hardest issues to deal with because the U.S. government is in a position where it can't necessarily share all information with the families as to what's being done to try to locate and recover their loved ones. At the same time, the family members have a right to understand what's being done and a right to demand of their government every possible means and effort to get their loved ones back. So this is a very difficult situation. But what this does is it accelerates and amplifies the hostage policy review that was already underway as a result of what happened in Syria. A review that isn't just about how the government handles families and interrelates with them. That has to improve, no doubt. But also, what's our intelligence gathering look like? What are the modalities of recovery? Or do we have it right? What are our policies around negotiations or discussions with terrorist groups? We've seen, for example, the Al-Qaeda affiliate Jabhat al-Nusra in Syria release an American. Under what conditions can this be undertaken? And so I think this is an important part of that review process, but no doubt you've got deep frustration from the families that are affected by these kinds of events.
Yeah, and there are, as you mentioned, a lot of difficult issues to tackle here, including whether the U.S. pays these ransoms. There are some countries that do it, and this is all part of that review.
Absolutely. I don't think we're going to fundamentally change our policy of no concessions. It's often talked about we don't talk to terrorists. We can talk to terrorists. The reality of our policy, though, is we have a no concessions standard. The British government aligns with that standard. Most other countries around the world don't. The reality is they pay for their hostages back. And
does that complicate U.S. efforts to get hostages back?
Absolutely. In part, it creates a differential between American and British hostages and others. When I was in the White House, you had instances, for example, in Iraq, where an American was being held in a farm in Iraq by hostage takers, and the Europeans, the non-British Europeans, would get funneled in and out, and they would be released, and part of that was payments were coming in. The poor Americans sat there for months waiting for rescue. We eventually did rescue them, fortunately. But the reality is, you have a differential, and it creates a market for hostage taking. And at the end of the day, an American or a British may be taken just as part of the network of hostage taking, which has now become a part of the terrorist MO. And so you've seen the Islamic State, you've seen Al-Qaeda take hostages for profit and also for propaganda.
So does that put American lives in danger?
Absolutely. I mean, the reality is that in these crisis zones in particular, when Americans are in the environment, when hostage taking is part of the terrorist methodology and actual fundraising as well, that clearly puts any Westerner, to include Americans, at risk. And when they know Americans can be used for propaganda purposes and as pawns, that sort of heightens the value of them. And so all of that has to be weighed as you think about a hostage policy review, and you don't want to incentivize anybody to take Americans as hostages.
It is, as you note, a difficult discussion to have.
Frustrating, difficult, and emotional.
For Juan Zarate, I'm Jeff Pegues, and that is Flashpoints.